Wars don't always start the way you think. This small war began with the theft of vegetables and would end with a confrontation between men and a group of cannibalistic Bigfoot. In this episode, we'll take you back to 1855 in LaFleur County of what is now Arkansas to discuss the Choctaw Bigfoot War.
And we will see you on the inside for the very first time and not the second because we restarted this for no other reason. It's fine.
You are now entering the realm of the Freaky Deaky, an unsuspecting stop at the crossroads of fantasy and reality, where the frayed edges of make-believe seep into this cookie-cutter white picket world you've been led to believe is far from extraordinary. What you're about to hear are true stories.
Alleged true stories.
Christian, just... okay? Tales of the strange and inexplicable thought only to exist in film and folklore. Although difficult to accept, we do not know everything about this reality. About time or space, what lies beneath the ocean's depths. And try though we might, the unchanging truth remains. There are some things we legitimately cannot explain logically.
And now that we're on the inside, welcome back to the Freaky Deaky. Folks, we ask one thing of you, and that's that, listen to this episode in its entirety. If you're a fan of what you hear, slap a 5-star review on that bad boy. It really does help us get past those pesky algorithms and take over the world one small, weird podcast at a time, and that's what we're known for. If you're a fan of ridiculously dumb soundboards and dry humor, you're in the right spot. That's all you need to know, really. You can find us on social media at Freaky Deaky Pod. Join the conversation. Let us know what you think. Let us know episode ideas. If you want us to look into something, go ahead and jot that down. Comments are now available on Spotfiy as well. So you can comment on YouTube, Spotfiy, or across all socials. It really doesn't matter to us.
As the cool kids say, like and subscribe.
Okay. Only really works for one thing, but that's fine. And also, we should mention again that Sleep with the Lights On, our once exclusive YouTube show, is now available on Spotify under a separate podcast channel. You can find that on this podcast channel by clicking on More Like This or something like that. And we have podcast recommendations, or you can just type it in the search bar, TFD, Sleep with the Lights On, where every episode of Sleep with the Lights On is being debuted every week until we catch up to our YouTube, in which case it'll be released every other Monday. So go check that out. Be sure to rate and review that one. It really does help us out. As I mentioned before, support the show at thefreakydeaky.com. Buy merch. Become a producer like our boy Eric Long, keeping the lights on here at Freak Nation. And I believe that's it. Christian, let's start this episode for the first time, and definitely not the second time.
Definitely
and just know I believe in you, Christian. You can do this.
Okay, so
it's been a while.
Still hate that song.
It's been a while.
So Scott, some of the sources I used are TexasCryptidHunter.com.
Okie dokie.
And Oliver Bennett at Hangar One Publishing.
Ah, yes, of course, Oliver Bennett.
So the Choctaw are a Native American tribe originally from southeastern United States, known as great warriors and hunters whose toughness on the field of battle became a thing through many years of fighting other tribes. The Choctaw started training. What the fuck? Oh, okay.
When you said this episode was ready, Christian, I honestly, in my heart, believed you.
It is ready. I just cannot read.
I can read.
I'm like, maybe I'm more tired than I thought because I just totally skipped the line.
Wow.
Okay. They participated in wars during colonial times and even found themselves in battles during the Revolutionary War. The Choctaw started training their warriors from a very early age, so kind of like Spartans. Everything would change in the 1830s under the Indian Removal Act.
Racist, but all right.
It's about to get worse. Colonizers were in need of land, so they forced the Choctaw to move to Oklahoma from their ancestral lands.
Who put that word colonizers in there? Was it you?
I just think that's a funny
I
word.
know. Yeah, you're a very racist person,
I think
Christian.
it's funny as hell.
Yeah, there's a lot of words I could say that might sound funny as hell, but I bite my tongue.
So something that's not funny is moving them from their ancestral lands.
Definitely not funny.
This tragedy came to be known as the Trail of Tears. As many as a quarter of the population did not survive the forced march. As you can imagine, after the cruelty of the Indian Removal Act, life would not be easy. They lost their traditional hunting grounds and resources, along with the connection to their ancestors who had passed on, which is a very important thing because Native American groups tend to worship ancestors.
Hmm.
So they're going to lose their connection if they're not near where their ancestors' remains are.
They really do be like that.
The Choctaw were disciplined and resilient, and would overcome many of the hardships, and were able to persevere in the Oklahoma Territory. So now we're going to get to about the time of the story, which again is in Leflore County. We're going to use a little quote here from Oliver Bennett. Leflore County, named after the prominent Choctaw family of the same name, was a microcosm of the challenges and opportunities faced by the tribe during this era. The Leflores were of mixed Choctaw and French descent, had long played a significant role in the tribe's political and economic affairs. Their influence and leadership helped to bridge the gap between the Choctaw and the encroaching American settlers, but also highlighted the complex and often fraught nature of these cross-cultural interactions.
Ooh.
Yeah. So let's get into the war.
Our favorite thing.
Yes.
Let's get into war.
It began with the theft of vegetables, then some livestock and other food. All of this was taken during the night by unidentified thieves. The thieves were like modern-day special forces, quietly getting in and out with no one seeing them. They never raided a Choctaw encampment when a guard was posted. Farmers nearby would set traps, but whoever was committing the thefts would fall
into a hole that the farmers set.
That's kind of funny, foreshadowing there. But whoever was committing the thefts would not fall for these traps. And some of them were holes in the ground.
Well, that is MO of the old days, One of the easiest traps to make. I mean, outside of the digging and whatnot.
Many of those that tried to track down the perpetrators would kind of respect the thieves. While these crimes would create headaches, the white farmers and the Choctaw were not overly concerned. That is until the women and children began to disappear.
As they do.
They vanished from their homes, disappearing into the wilderness. So this is when it became time to mobilize the Choctaw warriors. The top warriors were part of the light horsemen. These were like the Choctaw Delta Force and were known for being skilled warriors and trackers.
I feel like that's a really weird comparison to the Delta Force.
I mean,
which I feel like might be a little more advanced, but as you were.
I could use a more ancient group, but anyway, Joshua LaFleur was the leader of the light horsemen. As mentioned earlier, he was of mixed descent, Choctaw and French, and he was known for a commitment to protecting his people and preserving the Choctaw way of life. He was smart and courageous, along with being skilled in diplomacy.
You seem very confused. Is everything okay over there?
I have a quick aside here for what I think are giants of lore. Tall humans. I don't know why I brought that in there. Probably get rid of that, Scott. There must be
copious amounts of marijuana you did while putting this together.
No, I don't usually do that when I'm putting these together.
Christian, I've heard these scripts. There's no way you're not baked out of your mind, but it's okay.
It's okay not to put me down sometimes.
It probably would be. But would our ratings stay the same? Something has to bring entertainment,
Oh, I know why I put that there. Because we're about to meet the Tubbee warriors.
Excuse me? I mean, in today's climate, you're going to call them the Tubbee warriors? Wow.
I might be pronouncing it wrong, but it's spelled Tubbee. Could be the Tubbee.
But then they're just free television warriors.
They're not Teletubbies.
Wow. Got them. Yeah, Tubbee, I guess, how else would Tubbee? Tubbee.
I mean,
nothing. They all sound weird, honestly.
Who knows? Whenever we get on some of these stories, especially Native American stories, those names are hard to pronounce.
They'll chime in, I'm sure.
LaFleur brought with him the Tubbee warriors, and they were legendary.
Well, they are now.
And according to Oliver Bennett, a family of giant men known for their incredible size, strength, and fighting prowess. Standing at nearly 7 feet tall and weighing over 300 pounds each.
They were the Tubbee warriors.
Yeah. The Tubbee clan were an imposing presence on the battlefield and were feared and respected in equal measure by their enemies. Now it's time for war. LaFleur's group consisted of 30 Choctaw. This number includes the giants, Humorous, Tubbee, and his 6 sons. The light horsemen got their name from the Tubbies, who were highly skilled despite being so large. So they were great on the horse.
Well, you should ask the horse that, first of all. The horse might have... They're like, well, they were not great on the horse. We wish they weren't on the horse.
Yeah, those must have been some strong horses.
Budweiser commercial somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. That's the image I got.
Hmm.
So this group was well armed as they traveled through a region now known as the McCurtain County Wilderness Area. As they rode, they began to see things that let them know they were tracking the kidnappers. Abandoned camp, broken branches, a few footprints, and shredded clothing. And this is about the time forests seemed to darken and become quiet.
Oh.
The vibe was dangerous, as we normally hear in situations like this.
The vibe was not mellow.
No. LaFleur halted his troops and looked through a spyglass, which is sort of like binoculars, but it's not binoculars. It's
monocular.
Yeah, monocular. That's a good way to say it. I was going to go one-nocular.
One-nocular, that works as well.
What he saw caused him to call a charge. They charged toward a stand of trees about 500 yards away. As they got close to the trees, the stench hit them. It was decay and composition, which I always feel like when people are like, Bigfoot stinks. I'm like, that's the thought that comes into my head as they smell like decay and
decomposition,
rotted meat.
Yeah, well, that would check out.
Many of the horses began to buck and pull back. Riders were thrown to the ground. Only LaFleur and the Tubbies remained atop their horses. They continued into the pines, no doubt thinking they were about to end the kidnappers' existence. That is when the men quickly came to a large earthen mound.
Giants buried beneath it, no doubt.
I have a little note here for Scott. More giant evidence.
Boom. See, I do the same thing with my episodes. I'll say what you're about to say.
Yeah.
But Christian says something here.
Look, now on this mound, they find a scene reminiscent of Beyond the Wall in Game of Thrones.
How was I? Okay. And they're back, people. Every episode Game of Thrones references are back.
They are. It's been a great season.
Wow.
Scattered on the mound were the bodies of women and children in various states of decomposition.
Okay.
The men saw some of the killers fleeing into the tree line on the other side of the mound, but 3 of the killers stood their ground. The killers stood tall and huge, beating their chest, bodies completely covered in hair.
Beat it out of them.
Yes. And they were snarling. This is where I'd like to remind you that the LaFleur and the Tubbies are Choctaw warriors, and while many would have froze when faced with something like this, they charged. LaFleur drew his pistol and sword as he charged, which is pretty impressive on horseback.
And both hands. You know.
Yeah. When he was close to the nearest creature, which would be later called an ape by some who told the story.
Liars is what we call them.
Which is kind of weird because we don't have evidence of apes existing in the North America that I know of.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Sasquatch swung at the head of LaFleur's horse, killing it instantly.
Whoa.
Rolling away from the horse, LaFleur quickly stood, emptying his gun into the chest of the monster. He switched to striking the creature with his sword, leaving large gashes as it roared in pain. The Tubbies were like the rest of us in that the horror before them created hesitation. Because of this, one of the other creatures moved behind LaFleur, who was still distracted with the initial attack. The second Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, grabbed LaFleur's head from behind between his hands.
He squished it like a grape.
No, he pulled it from his shoulder, so you were close.
Celery stalk again. Wow.
The horrifying death of LaFleur brought the shocked Tubbiemen back to the attack. They unloaded with a .50 caliber buffalo gun, dropping 2 of the creatures in an instant. It's a big-ass gun.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
The third Bigfoot was wounded and fled toward the trees. Robert Tubbee, who was already 6'11" at 18 years old, overtook the wounded murderer, sending it into the afterlife with his hunting knife. Do you remember?
Some real Rambo energy coming off.
Big, 7-foot-tall Native American,
Tubbee.
Which is and I know we've talked about it on the show. This was an old, I think it was a giant. We were talking about giants because I don't even remember which
It's hard to keep track at this
explorer, but they were in Florida and they came across what is Florida now, came across a Native American tribe where the chief was like 7 foot tall and all of his sons were like 7 foot tall. Seems almost unheard of when you go anywhere in the ancient world, but so it sounds similar, and maybe they're distantly related to that same other tribe.
I mean, who's to say, you know?
That's pretty freaking tall. So the rest of LaFleur's men got their horses under control and arrived after all the violence ended. Joshua LaFleur was buried along with the women and children. The ape-like creatures, which to me don't sound very ape-like, were burned. Many of the men were said to be plagued by nightmares for the rest of their lives.
That would check out. I feel like that's warranted, you know?
Now, some people think that this is just a legend.
But not you.
Well, Joshua LaFleur existed, as did the Tubbies. You can go back into the records of the area and see their names. And then some Native American elders believe this actually happened, but it was further west.
Colorado.
Not that far west. And again, I find it a little interesting that the people of the time are calling these things apes.
Yeah.
When everything we're hearing sounds like a Bigfoot.
They really do be like that.
Also, the things they called war back in the day would probably be considered skirmishes now.
Yeah. They stole my vegetables, damn it.
Yeah. Which was
And
annoying,
killed my women
but
and
fine.
children.
Yeah, but when they come from for the women and children, we have to go after them.
That's true.
But some of the descriptions, like the mound was basically all bodies, like the mound when they came into this clearing.
Yeah.
Were all bodies of these different people just stacked together.
Now, were they eating them?
Yes.
That's where the cannibal aspect comes from. When I hear cannibalistic Bigfoot, I'm like, they eat each other? But I guess it makes sense.
And we don't hear too often of cannibalistic Bigfoot, but I think I've heard of them up here in Alaska.
Yeah.
And in a few other places. They don't tend to typically do that.
I mean, honestly, Christian, every Bigfoot episode you've put together has been outside the norm of what people usually hear in Bigfoot lore. So you got a nice streak going of very interesting stories that I don't think a lot of people have heard.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how many people have heard about the Choctaw War with the Bigfoot. But I mean, I'd kind of heard about it in the past, but never really paid attention to it. There's not a ton of information, but also, if you remember back when they first went into the clearing with this mound, a lot of the other ones got away.
Yeah.
So theoretically, they're out there doing their cannibalistic stuff.
That does.
In the American South. And who knows where or what happened after that.
I certainly don't.
I almost was going to add another Civil War Bigfoot story in, but that would have taken a lot longer. But plus, I want to use some of those later. It's just, I still like gravitating to the older stories before they kind of got tainted with all of what's in the zeitgeist now about the paranormal and the strange.
It's always like portal jumping and stuff like that?
I mean, that stuff doesn't bother me because I can see why people believe that could be a thing, because otherwise I think we would have come across an actual Sasquatch that we can take pictures of or make sense of, but we
take selfies with.
Yeah, that we never get to that point. Like, and I've made jokes about it. I may have talked to you about it, but there was a picture that came out of a young Sasquatch, supposedly, and it looked like Choctaw from Land of the Lost. And I was like,
well, wait a second here.
Or what's the name of that one guy that's really controversial in the Bigfoot community whose wife, I think, does special effects?
Yeah.
So he always gets ridiculed, but he's really devout about what he says is Bigfoot and actual footage of it. It's like,
have you seen that actual footage? Todd Standing is his name, by the way.
Yeah, I have.
I watched that whole documentary or whatever he put together. It's compelling, but at the same time, like when you find out his wife is a master special effects artist, and if you line up the Bigfoot's face with Todd Standing's face, they're practically the exact same. I did see somewhere, I forget, it was probably like a comment on Facebook or something. Someone was posting that picture and asking what everyone thought about Todd Standing's quote unquote evidence. And someone said that they were actually neighbors with either him or his son. And that when he talked about it, like he thoroughly believed that what he saw was a Bigfoot. And And granted, like if you faked it, you wouldn't be like telling everyone back, "Yeah, I'm just kidding. That was me the whole time." But you know, it's in those situations, it's kind of hard to tell where the actual truth is because there's reasons for both sides to be lying about that. You know,
I think that's similar to like the Patty footage, like when
that's pretty much guaranteed at this point, though. Like, there's been so much analysis on that
it's fake.
That it's real. That like legitimately, like you see.
I think the analysis can only go so far on that one. So I still have never been convinced by that footage.
Have you? I mean, maybe I just need to send you some videos.
And it's not, and this is without the analysis part. I feel like that's a human walking.
That's your feelings, right? Not the analysis.
Kind of like if we go back a little bit, your feelings on dinosaurs and humans walking together.
No, it's common sense. There's a difference. But
we talked about common sense. Was it last episode?
It was last week. Yeah.
But either way, and it's not even the walk. It's the looking over the shoulder.
Is it the swinging titties that are just...
I'd never noticed those until someone pointed them out.
There's people that notice the nipple. That's how in depth these people have looked at this video. There's a nipple in view.
I feel much better that I'm not...
It's called Nipplegate. No, that's what I would call it, but it's fine.
Yeah, I feel better that I didn't notice that. But it's just... But again, I mean, that's my interpretation of what I think something like that should walk. To me, something like that should walk pretty close to a human. Maybe not completely. Maybe like Wilt Chamberlain.
Sure.
Who was a basketball player, for those of you that don't know, that was really tall.
Mansplaining basketball.
I mean, that's an old school player, so maybe nobody knows about him.
I know about him.
Yeah, but...
What, I'm old now?
You have common sense.
I told you that we don't have listeners 18 to 24 that listen to this show, according exclusively to statistics. So, to me, I'm like, everyone listening should know who Wilt Chamberlain is. A Bigfoot or giant, no doubt.
Prolific in other things that weren't basketball.
Okay.
So do you feel like this happened? Do you feel like the Choctaw War?
I mean, I believe a lot of these old stories, the native stories and stuff like that come out. And I think a lot of them get buried and maybe they just don't get shared a lot. And I also think that a lot of Native American tribes and cultures and stuff keep some of the stuff to themselves. I think they're not known for dishing out all the hot goss on a lot of the lore that surrounds them, you know?
Well, I also feel like we've lost so many of them since through the years of being in the United States that we've lost a lot of history.
It does happen.
Doing research on a Thunderbirds episode, I come across a lot of the same things with the Native American stories. Is there's parts missing because we're missing entire tribes in some cases.
Which is unfortunate because especially in those cultures, it's my understanding that the stories are passed down generation to generation. So if you have someone that was supposed to hold and, you know, share that tradition or that story down and they end up getting wiped out, then guess what? That story is gone.
Yeah. For
the most part. There may be bits and pieces or people that remember certain elements, but yeah, that's an unfortunate thing that happens.
And because I'm a history nerd, I've seen this happen in other parts of the world.
Sure.
A lot of times because of the ancient world was pretty violent.
Yeah, it was pretty Mad Max out there.
Yeah, when it got violent then, sometimes whole communities would be wiped out or enslaved and just disappear.
Yeah, take that.
But I don't remember where I was going with that.
Probably nowhere.
Well, another thing, like we heard this thing about mounds. And mounds, you know, now looking back on it, there were a lot of damn mounds in the United States, mostly Native American mounds.
There still are.
Yeah. Many of them were torn down just to create farmland. Who knows what we're missing from doing research there. A lot of people in the United States have reported finding giant bones in those mounds.
That's, burials.
And while some people may believe giants tend to be biblical, I tend to believe they're just tall people, but also could be Sasquatch. I mean, there's
a lot of speculation out there, you know?
Yeah. Early on in our seasons, I don't know if I think it was seasons back then.
It was.
When we did 2 Girls,
1 Cup.
Not that one. Never seen that one.
Oh, yeah. Consider yourself lucky. All right. Yeah. I had it forced on me. Ugh.
Not me.
People don't forget.
I was older and smarter. But
actually, you know who made me watch it? the guy that gave me the name the Freaky Deaky when I was like probably 15 or 16.
It's all
It's
connected.
him. He was on a computer. He's like, yeah, you gotta check this out. I'm like, oh God, what the fuck? I was like, dude, you are a monster.
Yeah,
Now that's Freaky Deaky. Or give me
Yeah,
out of
that's
here.
like the modern version of Faces of Death.
Yeah, equally traumatic, but for vastly different reasons.
I have a mental block that I have to throw up whenever I think about that because it
Faces of Death?
it was so traumatizing when I saw it.
Mhm.
You probably saw it younger than I did.
I did, and I only saw one video. It was back when it was on like YouTube or some shit, and it was like an accidental thing where I was just watching random stuff. I was like, "What's this?" And I clicked on it, and it made me cry like immediately. And it was like, and I know like a lot of those were actually faked.
It's nice to know all these years later that about half of those things were fake, but some of them weren't.
The one that I saw, I feel like it had to be faked. It was literally this dad was blowing up like a kiddie pool or something like that, one of those inflatable ones. And the kid comes over and like jumps on it while he's in the middle of blowing it up, and his head explodes.
That one,
That sounds very fake when you think about it, right? But as a kid, I had no idea. And like the reaction the kid had to it added to it for me. And the kid was like horrified by what just happened. I was horrified by what just happened. I was like literally crying, like, what the fuck is this?
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah. And I can still visual, like frame by frame, I can still remember it. It's that embedded into my body at this point. I'm like, well, that's going to be there forever. That's great.
The one that sticks with me is all those people at the restaurant beating the monkey on the head so they could eat their brains.
I remember that one too.
And they were all laughing. And I mean, I'm sure that's just fancy editing, but
I don't know. It depends on where you're at, because there's certain countries in the world where they do eat monkey brain, and it is, you crack the skull open. It's very fresh. It tastes very good when it's fresh. Like, no, I'm all right.
And it just is further proof that sometimes I'm not impressed with us humans.
Sometimes. Yeah.
You know, okay, fine. You're going to eat something like that, but to take that much pleasure anyway.
This concludes the Faces of Death segment.
I don't know how we got there, but also I think most people in this genre
are probably familiar with something along those lines. We see some interesting things when looking for spooky ghosts.
So while that was kind of a short story, I added a couple others in here.
All right.
But I do always love those old Native American stories about.
Yeah. And you have a good ability of finding them, Christian. Not too many people pick these things out. Or maybe they just don't share them. But we're different here.
I just think it adds to the potential that these things once existed.
And maybe we're more common than they are now, you know?
I'm not 100% sure they could exist now, even though we live in Alaska where
they definitely exist.
Theoretically, something like that could exist because there's so much space where humans don't go.
Sure.
But also, this is a harsh land. So no wonder the ones up here are a little bit grouchier than the ones you hear about at other places.
That would check out.
So this one, we're going to stay in the South. It's not war related.
Okie dokie.
Because it's around the time of your birth.
Ah, yes. Mother's Day, 1990.
Well, I don't know exactly what day, but
okay.
This encounter happened in West Alabama around 1990. And it comes from No Name Joe 31. And I would have loved to have gone farther into that Choctaw War, but there's not much information, like any of the old stories.
Yeah, it's kind of you're piecing things together, whatever you can find.
Yeah. So this story starts off, I'm either 7 or 8 years old and deer hunting with my dad. Now, the connection here is they're in northern Choctaw County, north of Jakin, Alabama. So it's
pretty close.
Yeah. We're going to a bottom he found on his family friend's land that had a lot of scrapes and rubs, etc. So,
oh yeah,
I don't know what a bottom is in hunting speak, but typical stock hunting for the South is what he's talking about.
Okay.
I hunted in California.
And you just said, bro, and dude, when you wanted to get someone's attention.
Yeah. We had fancy calls for the duck calls. Just kidding. We had
play Donald Duck sounds.
We had a regular duck call. I remember it being pitch black. My dad never got out in the woods this early, but it was the middle of the rut, and he was persistent, and we had to follow train tracks for 3/4 of a mile. You then come to a train trestle, and the bottom was about 500 to 600 yards from there. So I guess you're just going downhill.
I guess that's probably where the bottom is.
Yeah.
That would check out.
The way they say the bottom is like the upside down.
We're going to the bottom.
Yeah.
Or it's a gay club somewhere in LA. That's fine.
I feel like a joke could be made there, but...
Well, the joke was made there.
Yeah. there I once did UPS Christmas help deliveries, and we went to the back door in Lancaster.
I've been to several gay bars myself when I lived in Vegas.
Did you?
I had pretty much all my homies were gay, so I was like, hey, I'll be your wingman. Why not? It's cool. Let's do it.
Language. Everything was normal other than how early we got out there and it still being pitch black. And then once we crossed the trestle, my dad started getting a bit weird. I thought I could hear something pacing us just off the tracks, maybe 5 to 10 feet into the woods.
That is not very far into the woods.
No, not at all.
You should be able to see it.
Sometimes, 5
feet? We're farther apart than 5 feet right now.
He's also 7 or 8 years old, though, too. So maybe 5 feet was like
25 feet.
Yeah. But also, from walking around here in Alaska, sometimes you're like when we go hiking, you look off into the trees and you can see maybe 5 to 10 feet inside those trees. And then it starts getting dark if they're really close together. And
I haven't been anywhere that's super dense like that. I mean, like North Fork had like some denseness to it. But even like, the nature center and stuff like that, it's not super dense. You can see a decent amount.
I feel like have you hiked Thunderbird Falls?
Yes.
There's a couple places in there, and maybe it's a little bit farther off, but you look into those trees and they get pretty dense.
Yeah, I guess that's probably.
But that's a little ways off the trip. Either way, though, sometimes we hear, especially, maybe in the 90s.
Yeah. And I'm not saying there's not dense forests. So it's entirely possible that something was 5 to 10 feet in the woods. But also seems like kind of a bit of a stretch.
He says, we had an old Maglite, but it was on the ass end of its batteries and provided very little help.
That's poor preparation.
Yes,
on their
it
part.
is. Which, having hunted with my dad, they were not as good at prepping as they thought they were. I'm pretty sure the beer had a lot to do with it, though.
Probably. Like, we're probably fine, right?
Yeah, the beer the night before as they're packing, My dad didn't do too bad, but there was always something that could have been there that wasn't.
Classic.
This went on for a quarter of the mile, until we got to the bottom. And when we got there, he was still acting strange. I'd been in the woods with him since I was 3. Till this day, have never seen this man scared like that. We clear out a spot, leaves and such, not making much noise while we sat and hunted. I just remember how quiet it was. No birds, no squirrels running around, nothing, which is a good sign to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Dad is still acting weird, though he gets better around daybreak. When the sun comes up, everything is back to normal. No weird feelings, and the birds are chirping again. About 7:15 a.m., all sound stops, and we start hearing crashing through the woods. My dad is visibly shaken by us being stalked and hands me his Remington 730-06. And it has a nice Bushnell scope. Till the day I die, I'll never forget what he told me. He said, it's a buck. As soon as he comes out, shoot it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, about 150 yards down the bottom, I start seeing limbs breaking in the outline of something 7 to 8 foot tall and super dark brown.
It's a big ass buck.
Yes, and this is seeing it with his own eyes before the scope. When I put the rifle up to my shoulder and the scope to my eye, I saw this thing tear down a 20 to 25 foot pine and immediately became terrified.
As you should.
I tried to hand the rifle back to my dad.
He said, that's no buck, father.
And he just kept telling me, shoot it. It's a big buck. Shoot it. He wouldn't even look through the scope.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a poor choice.
This is kind of a confounding bother.
Just shoot the damn thing.
So this thing comes out about 75 yards from us and is huge. I'm looking through the scope at what I cannot identify other than the classic description of Bigfoot, but also nappy.
Now, did the dad realize that this was definitely not a buck at this point, or was he just wasted off his ass like, kill it?
You would think he realized it.
He said, it's a buck on 2 legs. It's time.
So basically the hair was matted all over. I'm relaying what I'm seeing to my dad, but he just keeps telling me to shoot. I got the weirdest feeling, though terrified, when I got it squared in the crosshairs. It was like I was seeing something I shouldn't have seen, and at the same time was telling me not to shoot it. I watched it till I got chills and then dropped the rifle. Got my ass chewed out by my dad for that move, which is uncalled for because the dad is basically telling him to murder a human-like
shape
thing.
at the very least.
Yeah.
And why couldn't the dad just pick up the fucking rifle and look through it and be like, what are you so afraid of, you pansy? And they're like, oh, wait, never mind. That looks
Maybe this was
terrifying.
one of those old, we got to go out and make my son a man.
Yeah. You become a man today, boy.
Got to shoot a Sasquatch.
Put your chocolate milk down, damn it.
I would not put my chocolate milk down.
I wouldn't either.
It's
I
delicious.
enjoy it. It's very tasty.
I was terrified and got up out of our spot to run, and he grabbed me and told me to shoot it one more time. I shouldered the rifle, squared it up, and once again, some weird feeling came across me to the point of I'd be killing a human or something, and at my age, had no clue what was happening.
Well, at that point, do it, and then be like, well, my dad kept saying to shoot it, so put him away.
And I begged my dad to take the gun, and when I got the rifle back up, it was gone. My father and I didn't talk about this for another 30 years. He's the no-nonsense type, high school football coach, etc. I brought it up at our family Thanksgiving a few years ago and had the story I told recited in verbatim to me, and also found out that he thought whatever it was started stalking us prior to crossing the trestle. He heard something hit the water when we crossed. Weird thing is, I had nightmares for years following this thing, somehow in the dream or in the nightmares that followed me back to my house and just watched me.
I said, hey, thanks for not shooting me, kid.
Yeah.
Your dad's kind of an asshole.
Exact same everything, just barely in the woods outside of the house I lived.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Like in this story, the wild thing isn't even in the Bigfoot. It's the dad like, kill the Bigfoot.
Yeah.
No, Dad, you take the gun. No, you kill it.
Like in this situation, I don't care if you're trying to teach your son whatever. You take the fucking thing. If you're so manly, you shoot it.
Yeah. And don't, like, you're going to yell at your kid for dropping a gun because he doesn't want to shoot something like this.
I know. Yeah, it's a buck. Don't worry about it. Dad, I think I've seen a buck before, though.
Yeah, even at that age, if you've been hunting with your dad since you're 3.
Even if you haven't been hunting, you know what a deer looks like.
Yeah, especially when it comes out of a clearing. Maybe not in the trees as much.
Yeah.
Plenty of people have been shot because people thought but they're just shooting at movement.
Yeah.
This thing's coming out of the trees, picked up a tree and ripped it out of the ground.
It's like, hey there.
20-foot tree.
That is pretty terrifying.
Also, feels a little psychic, though, like this thing was telling him not to shoot, which we've heard before.
So many stories, man. So many stories about the mind speak. God, I tell you what, I go back and forth on what these things are, like every time I talk about them. Because I'll hear a story, I'll be like, yeah, it's definitely physical. And then like the next story, I'm like, okay, well, that thing's definitely interdimensional traveler status. He's got mind speak. He's hopping in portals. He's doing the whole 9. Who's to say, man?
Me, I'm going to say probably not portal related or alien related like some people.
What do you think about the connection between like UFOs and stuff like that? Like, because there's been a lot of stories where people see Bigfoot, they also see flying saucers. And I don't know. I mean, granted, if they saw anything, you know, but
here's the thing with that. And this is why we need better evidence. Is those are just like a person that believes in Bigfoot tends to believe in aliens and ghosts.
Sure.
Sometimes the fake dog man.
Yes, of course. The fake dog man.
So that could be part of it. You know, when I hear about flying saucers being around it, I get this sense of like Bigfoot's a botanist, like E.T. Roaming around collecting plant samples to take back to his home world.
But you don't think of, I mean, we hear enough stories of aliens and, crossbreeding and stuff like that, right? You don't think it could be some kind of weird alien experiment where it's like, let's just release this weird thing we made in our alien labs into the wild of Earth and see what happens.
Bigfoot to me sounds more like in the same family as humans.
In the same family, like Nephilim and stuff? Is that where you're going?
No. More like Neanderthal or, Homo heidelbergensis. I don't even know the name of that one.
Homo heidelbergensis?
Heidelbergensis.
Wow.
Neanderthals. What else is there? Denisovan.
Sure.
Just one of the different, human type or human type is the wrong kind of word, but I'm having trouble
Sapiens?
This morning. I don't think that's what's used normally either, but basically just a proto-human that maybe didn't survive to modern times.
Wouldn't it be funny if all those skulls that they find, like, look at these cavemen, was just like people with big foreheads and they were all self-conscious about it while they're alive?
Yeah.
Like, hopefully people don't think I'm from a past era when they find my body in the future.
Yeah.
Look at Dave with his giant skull. There was someone some very important, I'm not going to get into it, some very important event that happened recently. And the video was showing a newscaster, and he was talking, and I couldn't focus on what he was saying because his head was so fucking huge. And he was bald, so that didn't help. But his forehead was like 6 stories high. He was like Doug Dimmadome from Fairly Odd Parents, man. I swear to God, this dude, I was like, I looked over at China, I'm like, there's no way that's his real head, right? There's no way. But, so I don't know. Who's that just makes me think that maybe people had really ugly looking skulls. I'm like, oh, this is the missing link. We found it. That would be, to me, the most hilarious outcome of the entire situation.
The really ugly skulls were the ones where they were binding the skulls to make them long.
Yeah, those were in certain cultures for sure. All right, let's close it out with this next one. I'm sorry, Melanie's probably listening, and she constantly wants us to release 6-hour episodes. But every once in a while, your boy's all right with a shorter one, you know?
Yeah.
It does the body good when it comes to post-production and all that stuff to have a brief break every once in a while.
So this is a story from Angus Fraser.
Angus.
Bay, and it's Bay St. Lawrence. And this one, I found it's an old newspaper article. It looks like from the 60s.
Nice.
But it's the verbiage is basically this Canadian woodsman probably talking.
Can't wait to hear it. Christina, you might need to translate this for us.
Yeah. Nova Scotia is on the other side of Canada. And my understanding is Canadians don't like people from Nova Scotia. I could be wrong.
If anyone's going to preach that like it's fact and gospel, it should be people that are not in the area themselves.
Right.
So way to go.
This is one of the reasons why everybody hates Sidney Crosby, supposedly.
Okay. Some hockey in there as well, I guess.
Yeah. I don't say there is anything that can't be explained. Well, I don't know, except the hairy man. He lives down there around Lowland Cove. I don't know. I didn't see him the last couple years, but I've seen him previously. So that the reporter asked, why do you call him hairy man? Because he's got hair on him. He stands about 8 feet. He's got big arms that go down way beyond his knees, and he's got 2 picket ears. I've never heard that.
Is that like pointed elf ears, like picket fence posts?
I have no clue.
He's got 2 fence planks for ears.
Yeah, I have a feeling it means something different than what we think it means, but I don't know what it means. He's got round eyes, nice, beautiful round eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to say this in Canadian.
Uh-oh.
And that's a boat Tim.
It's a boat Tim?
A boat.
A boat.
I mean, it's kind of spelled out like this in the article, too. So maybe maybe it's an American interviewing a Canadian and making fun of him.
He's like, I don't know what this word means, but all right.
No, my friend from Michigan, so close to Canada, says a boat when he says about.
Wow, they got him.
So the long hair is hanging down like a great big fur coat, but I saw the eyes first. I sort of got fascinated with his eyes. There's about 20 people have seen him down there. I met him at Wreck Cove, now called Capstick. I was driving a half-ton truck right in the center of the road, as you do late at night when there's nobody there. At least I used to. I don't do it too much anymore.
Just drive in the middle of the road?
Yeah.
But what about the laws? What about the law of the land?
This is the old days. They didn't care about the law.
Wow. Anarchy.
Yeah. Canadians also.
Yeah, they didn't
They're
drive
just being nice to the animals hanging out on the side of the road, so they're driving in the middle.
Sure.
So anyway, pretty near hit him, but he jumped. He jumped over the truck to get away from me hitting him. And I've seen him twice since then. I was in Meat Cove and then up in Backlands.
I'm sorry, Meat Cove?
Yeah.
All right.
But I don't know what would he be? A crossbreed between humans and what else? That's the only explanation I have. Lots of people have seen him years ago too. The most that started him moving was when the mine was going. When they started blasting and drilling, then he started coming out. The reporter asked, did he ever hurt anybody? No, he'd stand just so close to me, and every time I'd move, he'd watch me. He'd follow me. I was hunting in the woods one day, hunting deer, and he'd follow me, like he was trying to study me, see what I was. And he followed for 2 miles in the woods, but he was staying far enough away so that I couldn't hurt him. I had the big gun in my hand. I could have fired at him any minute, but I know he wasn't going to hurt me. He'd be as far from me as that boat. So obviously he points to a boat. I'd stop behind a tree with a big deer gun, a 303 in my hand.
Oh, yeah.
And you know that's powerful. And he'd come close as the boat, and he'd part the little elders or alders. So the tree branches. Such a hard article. Okay, there we go. I need to use my finger because it's old school newspaper. So, and these trees stood about 8 foot apart. So he would part the alders just looking at me. You could see his nice, beautiful eyes. I call them beautiful eyes because they are so big. Long hair, the eyes are the first thing you'd notice. He'd look at me wondering what I was doing. And then as soon as I'd move, the bushes would go together. He'd keep parallel with me. I was by the river coming out till I got to the road. And I didn't see him anymore. Reporter asked, were you scared? I'm telling you, I was scared. I didn't know what he was going to do. Was he supernatural or from outer space or something a bullet wouldn't hurt?
All the above.
Yeah. I even lost respect for the gun looking at him. But I wouldn't shoot because I thought then in my own mind that he could be half human. I imagine he was. I had the gun in my hand and could have shot him. But I thought back about what my uncle used to say about seeing him, which I thought then was some way to keep me in the house in the nighttime. But now I came to know it was true. Reporter asked, do you think he's still living, still out there? Yes, I have a feeling there's more than one of them there. So anyway, my grandfather years and years ago saw his track. He thought it was a bear's track, and they followed it from the Bear Mountain for about 4 or 5 miles. That was spring of the year, and there was snow on the ground. But a bear doesn't walk on his hind legs that long. It would have had to be him because his tracks were about 6 or 7 feet apart, and it was like a man's foot. Of course, a bear's is too, but no bear is going to walk on his 2 rear legs for 4 to 5 miles. He came out of that Big Bear Mountain, which is kind of funny. There must be a lot of Big Bear Mountains or something because we lived near a Big Bear Mountain.
We're just very uncreative people naming things.
True. That's the first place they discovered his track. There's one part of that Big Bear Mountain I don't believe anybody can get up to. It's a sheer cliff. I don't think he could be there, but I always wanted to explore that area. There were 6 together one night. When they saw him, he was standing in the center of the road. They were walking down from the mine. But that's too long ago. When he left them, he couldn't turn his back on them. Just walked backwards into the woods. They went home and got the dog, see if they could track him down. Dog went as though it was a human being. Dog came back out. This is the weirdest interview. It's obvious it's a small town interview. Now, I wouldn't be scared sleeping with him all night. Seems like he's harmless to anyone, but he's there. You set rabbit snares or kill a deer in the woods, and this happened to me so often it's not even funny. I'd put the deer up so high, if I was standing on your head, I couldn't even reach it. When I came back, the deer was gone. It's taken. I mean, I could understand a bear's taking it or a wildcat eating it, but to get that, it's got to be a Bigfoot.
No other way.
Yeah.
Interesting. That took a lot of weird turns.
Yeah, it was.
The man was clearly drunk while he was being interviewed, which is fine. That happens.
Or he was just drunk all the time. I mean, that's the old days, though, too. I mean, by old days, I probably mean 50s or 60s.
Yeah. Or even today's.
Yeah.
But interesting.
But a lot of the typical things we hear about, except he was really into this thing's eyes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he really fell for it. Played the song.
Beautiful.
These eyes. What a callback. That's pretty much all we got for you guys.
Do you believe in Bigfoot more now than you did then?
No more than I did before, but I believed before.
I believe that it probably existed. I don't believe it really exists. I think it'd be pretty hard in most cases to have a...
You're entitled to your opinion, no matter how wrong it may be.
Yeah. It'd be hard to have a breeding population, especially ones that walk around like Florida and stuff. Like some of these places people see Bigfoot in, it just makes no sense to me. And I think I've said it on here before, unless they migrate or have like a religious pilgrimage to the old world, old land that they used to live on.
Migration patterns have been talked about multiple times as a theme or a potential.
See, but I almost, if they're pretty smart or close to humans, it could be a religious pilgrimage to go back to the old place of their ancestors too, which would be weird, but humans have done that for thousands of years. They still go on pilgrimages to the old world.
Yeah. But, you know, that's what we think. And we're not here for that. We're here for what you think. You let us know. What do you think of these stories? I'm always a big fan of Bigfoot. So it's nice to break things up with a little cryptid action every now and then. And we really don't talk about Bigfoot too often for something that I genuinely do enjoy.
And for something that is on a lot of our merch.
That is very true as well. He's somewhat of a mascot, and that's fine. That's all we got for you. Be sure to comment wherever you're listening. Let us know what you think of the stories. Give us your take on what you think of Bigfoot, huh? Still around? Ancient stories? You tell us. And be sure to find us on social media at Freaky Deaky Pod, wherever you are. Again, apologies to Melanie for a shorter episode, but hey, we've been giving you a lot of longer ones lately. It's time to give me a little break with the edits, huh? Not just a little bit. As of right now, this is 1 hour long. By the time I edit it, it will surely be around 45 minutes, and that's fine.
We need to come up with a topic we can do like a 3-hour episode on.
And then we need to find a producer to edit it.
Well, see, what we do is we do a 3-hour episode, but we break it up and just make it seem like a big, long episode.
Wow. Giving away all our secrets, huh? Anyway, folks, we'll see you right back here next week where we'll be talking about something else, because that's what we do here. In the meantime, have yourselves a fantastic week. We'll see you right back here on the Frinkity Dinkity. Goodbye.